talk about Sirtex? Would everyone like me to talk about why we buy companies when they appear to be more expensive than they are on Skaffold? Okay, I'll tell you a story very quickly. McMillan Shakespeare, Kevin Rudd came, I'll talk about McMillan Shakespeare again. Kevin Rudd came out and he said, we're not going to allow this legislation through, right? And the stock was suspended. Private companies came on the news, competitors to McMillan Shakespeare came on and said, we're sacking all our staff, we're closing down, there's no certainty in the industry, people aren't buying cars using novated leases anymore, and so on and so forth. McMillan Shakespeare was relisted after being suspended, and it came on at $7. Park that to one side. How did we buy it? We had 3 valuations on that company. 3 different valuations. One valuation was based on the legislation getting up, and that valuation was about $5. The same formula that's in Skaffold, right? No different, but different inputs based on a company that no longer would see growth in its novated leasing business. And so that was $5 if the legislation got up. If the legislation didn't get up, the valuation was $13, right? Now, we gave an 80%, roughly it was an 82% probability of the legislation not getting up, which meant there was an 82 times $13 times 0.82 gives us one valuation, plus 18% chance of the legislation getting up times $5. Add the two together, it came up to $11.30 or something like that. Now, the valuation in Skaffold wasn't $11.30. I think it was a bit high, it might have been a bit higher than that at the time. But we came up with a weighted average valuation based on those two extremes, and then we came up with a third number. And then it listed at $7 on the first day that it relisted. And I can remember the team sitting around the desk, they all stood up, they said, it's listed at $7. And they were like deer in the headlights. They were, what do we do? I said, well, hurry up and buy it. Okay. And away we went, and we happened to be the biggest buyer that day. But the point I'm making is we have a whole range of different ways of valuing companies. We don't just use one tool. So we might have a breakup valuation as well. I've got SEEK's, I've got our portfolio review, I've got our SEEK report. This is our report on SEEK. It is, it's a good 40 pages long, and we're doing multiple valuations on SEEK based on different scenarios. Now, with the question around Sirtex, we are either going to make an absolute fortune or we're going to lose, 4% on the portfolio. Why do I say that? Sirtex, for those of you that don't know, makes a product called Surspheres. Surspheres are irradiated balls, if you like, for want of a better word, that are a fraction of the width of a human hair. They're injected directly into an artery in the leg, and they're delivered to the liver, and they irradiate liver cancer. Now, what the company has discovered, and what surgeons, oncologists have discovered, is that in the salvage, what's called the salvage stage of liver cancer, and it's quite a, it's not a very pleasant thing to be talking about, but the salvage stage is basically the patient is going to die, and it's now a matter of months, and there is no recovery. So when these Surspheres are administered in that salvage setting, oncologists have discovered that the patients live a few months longer. Now, when you're healthy, you don't think that's a very big difference. But when you're dying, if you can live a few extra months, that's a massive, massive difference. So what the company has discovered is the number of oncologists who are administering Surspheres is increasing at a phenomenal rate, even without the results of the upcoming clinical trials. So we're seeing dosage sales going up, and they've had 44 consecutive quarters of dosage sales growth. And every 2 years, Sirtex runs a conference in Europe for oncologists, basically to talk about their latest usage of Surspheres and their latest findings and all that sort of stuff, and all the oncologists come. Now, what they found is the first one that they ran, they had 180 or 200 oncologists, and 36% of the attendees said that they would use Cerspheres after the conference. The last one that they had 780 oncologists attend, and fully 75% said that they would be using Cerspheres. And so doctors are putting their patients on this program because they're seeing benefits, not because the results of a clinical trial say that they should. They're noticing. So that's the current business. That's what we've got. We've got 8,000 dosage sales a year. That's the current run rate. On that basis, you wouldn't buy Sirtex, because on that basis the valuation is much lower than the price. And if you pull up Sirtex on Skaffold, if you can, the code's SRX, and pull up the value line screen, so you just wouldn't buy it. But here's the thing. There's 3 trials at the moment. The first one, the results of which will come in March, it's called the Surflox trial. And what the trial is trying to determine is whether or not administering Cerspheres at the diagnosis stage of the cancer, so when liver cancer is being diagnosed, whether that actually has any positive effect on the tumour and whether it extends life. Now, there's going to be, in our view, there's going to be a good result from the trial, but we don't know whether it's going to be an extraordinary result, and an extraordinary result would be this actually cures cancer, cures and removes the liver cancer, and so we are now going to make this a process that all oncologists must follow, right? That would be the first prize. Second prize is, yes, we've found benefits, and we recommend that oncologists should combine chemotherapy with Cerspheres. That's the second one. And the third one is, we've found benefits but not sufficient to be able to make a recommendation. And that's the third one. So for us, we believe, and it's just a belief, that it's one of those 3 good outcomes, but we don't know how good. Now, we'd like to think that it's going to be the middle one. If it's the middle one, the dosage sales could be a step change, not 8,000 to 9,000 or 8,000 to 16,000, but 8,000 doses to 140,000 doses. And the share price, you can see what the share price has done is they've gone from 0 doses to 8,000 doses. So imagine what might happen if they go from 8,000 doses to 140,000 doses. The share price could go to $60. The valuation would be something like that if that happens. Now, again, it's about, you asked about monodelphis earlier. Can we put those prospects into a formula? It's impossible. You just can't do it. So it comes down to prospects and our view of those prospects for the business. So we know what the valuation is based on the current, that's $5 for McMillan Shakespeare, right? That's the valuation based on the current business. Business as you were, so to speak. But we've got another valuation based on the results of the trial being very, very good. And that's what we're making our decision on. So that's how come we're buying things that the valuation doesn't look like it's cheap on Skaffold. The other comment that you made was about there's not a lot of cheap stocks in the market at the moment. That's a warning to you. That's a warning to you that Skaffold has given you, that the market is expensive, the band is playing, the party's still on, the punch is still being served, but you need to stand very close to the door, right? Because there'll be a time when the music stops and you want to be able to get a cab out of there.